How is Bill Gates involved, and why is Bill Gates involved in this whole process?
No, I'm not sure what at the early stages of this, say 25 years ago or more, what was the impetus for him to get his head and his money and his wife all wrapped in around the whole vaccine issue. I don't know if somewhere back in his place in time that he really bought into the fact that vaccines are good and they save lives, and so he was going to move into that space no matter what. I don't know if it's because there's technology involved with it, and now that this whole thing of contact tracing and tracking and downloadable apps and all those things, I don't know what the history is of that. I mean, the Corbett report, James Corbett has put out a 4-part series about the whole background on Gates, and I admit I've only watched the first 2, so there may be more information in there that really sort of spells out how Gates got his head so involved and his money so involved in the vaccine industry. But when he put up $10 billion with a B at beginning of 2010 to make 2010 to 2020 the decade of vaccines, and then it was actually the one who founded Gavi, the Global Alliance for Vaccination and Immunization, which is just a very nefarious organization that works with the World Health Organization and UNICEF in terms of being the economic piece between countries and UNICEF and the World Health Organization. They're sort of like the slush fund where they put the money through, and Gavi was funded by the Gates organization to get competitive cooperation working inside of the vaccine industry the way that it was working inside of the tech industry. So that's Gavi was formed, I think, around 2005, 6, somewhere in that area, and then became the main player in the decade of vaccines between 2010 and 2020. And so, Gates has sort of painted himself out to be this great philanthropist saving the world with all these vaccines. This is the same guy who does a TED Talk and tells you that the world is overpopulated, and if we play things just right, the vaccines can only do so much to decrease the population. This is the same guy who wants to save you with a vaccine. I mean, talk about, cognitive dissonance just in his own personal messages. But if you look back at the Rockefeller messages and how Rockefeller was such a nefarious guy, and they started to reposition him into being the great philanthropist, even though the money behind the scenes was it continued to go for pretty nefarious things.
But he's got so much money and influence that he is dictating public policy to a certain extent.
More than a certain extent, he's actually doing it. I mean, there was just a meeting, I think last week or maybe the week before, with 400 leaders here in the U.S. that were mayors of major cities and governors, and the meeting was held by Gates. What gives, how does he get that platform? This unelected official who hides behind a foundation. So therefore, because foundations, as we know on a global level, operate at a different set of rules and laws. And so he's got this layer of protection by being this philanthropist behind his foundation. Because the question I've often asked, Brian, and I don't know the answer to this, but it's like the people like George Soros and Bill Gates and some of the other cast of characters, knowing what we do know about them and knowing that there's a whole bunch more that we don't know in the general public, why can't they just be picked up and put in jail?